Well, I did say that the next episode would have some connection to my last episode, and it did. This game is actually based around a biblical reference. Brink is a 2011 class-based shooter that's totally not Team Fortress 2, and anyone who says otherwise will be hearing from some lawyers. This game revolves around a post-apocalyptic settlement called The Ark, a gigantic self-sustaining floating settlement that became the only inhabitable place on Earth after everything else literally flooded. The game's main conflict centres around a dispute between the refugees who live in shipping containers on the outskirts and the Ark's original founders. The refugees who became the rebels want to leave the Ark and reach out to the world outside and look for help. The founders reckon that this is a bad idea, a waste of resources and a massive risk. The rebels don't really see how things can get any worse because they have a plague to contend with and are overpopulated and living in squalor. Also, there's no women, so I'm assuming they've all got blue balls. This guy, who is a revolutionary, decides to rise up and try to take the Ark for his group, so that they can hopefully enact their plans and save the less fortunate. After learning this, you're given the choice between save the Ark and escape the Ark. Whichever one you pick is the one that your main character is sort of centered around. Right off the bat, you have to create a character. The character creation is actually pretty decent, though it is quite limited. For a start, there's literally no women in this entire game or the game's universe. There's a woman narrator and that's basically it. Which I feel limits like how much you can create and do. Like, I kinda like as many options as possible. There's a handful of preset faces, voices and styles. You don't get the option to adjust your character's face at all, so you just pick the one that fits what you're going for. The characters' faces are based around archetypes, which is a kinda cool idea, although a lot of them have a similar look or just feel the same all around. You can pick a number of voices for your character who are all listed as the name of their actors. The actors listed are actually quite decently picked, as they often have a few credits under their belts. Admittedly, it hardly matters what voice you pick, as you're basically a silent protagonist and the voices are really just used for multiplayer coordination. Another weird callback to a previous episode is the actors. Dafalabadine, oh for fuck's sake, I can't pronounce that right. But anyway, he apparently played Uriah in the Bible TV show. I honestly wasn't expecting this many dumb callbacks, but whatever. My biggest complaint about character creation is how many things are set. Tattoos, scars, and your face can't be changed after implementing them, and I find this to be a bit dumb, because I don't get why this is the case. If you want to talk about realism, it's hardly any more realistic than just going from completely bald to a head full of complex dreadlocks between cutscenes, is it? There are a lot of cool outfit choices that you can get. You can get an undershirt, a jacket, and some pants to pick from. This is cool though, some jackets take over the entire upper body portion of the outfit, and as far as I can tell, you always wear fingerless gloves no matter what. Which is cool because I like them, but if you want to wear anything else, you're SOL buddy. There's a number of outfits which you can mix and match as well and change the colour and patterns on. Though admittedly, they all sort of revolve around a sort of theme, so if you want a especially like unique look or a look based on anything beyond this sort of junk Fallout look that was kind of popular in post-apocalyptic games at the time, yeah, you're probably not going to be able to find it in this game. I will say though that the security do have more police-based outfits, and the rebels have more like punk anarchist outfits, but again, like, you couldn't wear a suit as a rebel, for example, or anything like that, so it's very limited as to what you can actually do with your character. There's a number of interesting options for customization, but like I said, it's a bit limiting, and most characters end up looking the same. You can also customize your loadout, which is also cool, but it has some drawbacks that I don't really like. One of them is that most of the weapons are assault rifles. There's one or two shotguns and sniper rifles. These weapons are very limited in how many options they offer, and most of them have very limited customization due to the fact that loads of shit is locked away in this game. Weapons often have a fair few options for customization, but most of it's locked away behind leveling. There's also some DLC as well, but it's not too heavy on the DLC this game, so I don't mind that too much. I think a grand total of like 4 outfits a lot to weigh behind DLC, and honestly you're not missing much if you don't get those DLCs. I know that unlockables are a bit of a bragging point for devs and players alike, but I honestly hate them when it comes to the game being this restrictive, especially at the start. I can't even get a sniper rifle even after beating the whole game because the sniper scope is arbitrarily locked off to me. I honestly prefer it when unlockables are the things that you earn rather than things that are just ransomed to me for sinking hours into the game. Sometimes I have to sink hundreds of hours just to get some of these things. Speaking of which, I really want to rag on this game's DLC because it kind of annoys me. There's one DLC that adds post-game stuff, and that's really cool. It has its flaws, but I'll burn that bridge when I get to it. However, there's a Fallout and Doom crossover pack, which actually was something that piqued my interest until I saw it. In both of them you get a t-shirt with the game's logo on it, tattoos that just look like any random thing was just taken out of the script and slapped onto the character, and some guns with game-related branding on them. But it comes across as really lazy and inelegant. If you got armor from the Fallout games like the NCR Desert Ranger outfit, or some Raider-based designs from Fallout 3, I'd respect that a lot more, but instead they opted for these shitty looking reskins of established items that look like a mod made by a child. That's part of my issue, by the way. They're just reskins of items that are already in the game. Again, if you had the BFG from Doom in the game, or the iconic 10mm pistol from Fallout, I'd find that really cool, but instead you just get these shitty repaints of an established item, and they just put Fallout stickers on it, and it's like, oh, it's a totally different thing now. Some of these items don't even look like the games that they're from, like the Fallout bandana that has the nuclear symbol on it, and nothing else. This isn't from the games. Some people associate that with Duke Nukem rather than Fallout, to the point that people call it the Duke Nukem symbol, not even knowing its true meaning. The vanilla game stuff resembles Fallout gear a lot better than the actual Fallout gear. And the Doom gear isn't really any better. If anything, you're even more screwed with that, because there's not much resembling Doom at all in the game. There's a number of perks for each class, of which there are 4. TF2, the game that this wants to be, has 9 classes, but they more or less do their best to streamline these classes into 4, that you can tweak to your own benefit. The tweaks come from the perks that you go for, the weapons that you use, and your character's body type. If you want to be like the Heavy from TF2, you have to go for a big body type as well as damage based perks. If you want to be more like the Scout, you have to go for a lightweight body, etc. It's a cool idea, but it's hobbled by the unlockables. Again, because you can only start off with the average build type for absolutely ages, and if you want to be a heavy based character, then you're going to have to more or less beat the game and then come back to it, which is a great way of alienating certain player types. On the upside though, it does mean that you can mix and match in certain ways. For example, you could have an engineer that can run around the map like the Scout, or maybe a heavy weapons guy who also has engineer abilities like the turret, or a really fat spy. Like, you can do all kinds of interesting things with this concept, and I kinda like it. The 4 classes are Medic, Soldier, Engineer, and Operative. Operative is basically the spy class who has the same abilities of sapping and wearing disguises, though the disguise thing doesn't seem to have much of an impact here, because there are a few missions where you can actually do more with it than just play an elaborate game of peekaboo. So I make my Rastafarian Casey Jones and start the game up, going through the Rebel campaign first. There's 2 campaigns, both Rebel and Security, seeing the same conflict from both perspectives. There's also 2 what-if scenarios and some DLC missions, which we'll cover them when we get to that point in the story. So after the mission briefing, you get a cutscene where some characters interact with one another. None of them are you're just sort of stood around in the background, and sometimes your appearance is so brief that you'd really have to be looking out to see it, and in 1 or 2 cutscenes I don't think you appear at all. These conversations have a conflict between 2 allied soldiers. Quite often it's about a line that they do or don't want to cross. One that comes up is that a character has family on the other side and is being questioned as to whether or not his loyalties are truly with the rebels. What is kind of interesting about playing both sides is that you get to see familiar conflicts on each side, and there are implications that some of the characters in the security campaigns have some form of relation to characters in the rebel campaigns, though it's never clearly stated. They come across as a bit formulaic, but these cutscenes are charming in their own way.
Brothers, for months now we've had an agent in the Founders Council. The time has come to pull him out. On my orders, he liberated some very specific intel and made his way to your safe house in the old visitor center. We're debriefing him now, but Moko and his men are hot on his tail. I've sent a boat to extract you all, but you have to protect him until we get all the intel. If they capture him, he knows too much. Don't let them take him alive. Mokoena's men will shoot to kill. You have to defend yourselves. Don't hesitate or you're dead. Hold out until the boat gets there.
You ready for this, brothers?
An hour ago I was making my kids breakfast. Then I get the call and get given this gun. And now...
Was the movement just about spray painting slogans for you?
No, it's just kind of sudden.
You think this day hasn't been coming for years? Chen's tried everything to avoid this. We've no options left. Look, any moment now, Mokoena's thugs will pour in here. They won't be asking questions. Are you ready to use these, brothers?
I am ready.
Then let's do this.
There's a sort of veteran guy with an Irish accent who gives off a bit of an old school IRA vibe. He's often the leader and the voice of reason, and it kind of works well given his age and his veteran-like demeanour. He doesn't seem to have a name, none of these characters do, and although they do have a name assigned to them in a mission, like in the actual gameplay, these names change every mission. One thing that you notice very early on is the stylized look of the people in this game. They have quite long necks and an odd body type, kind of like how characters looked in Time Splitters. I do like this, but it does contribute to the characters all looking very similar, and they all seem to have the exact same body shape. One thing that you notice very early on is the number of accents among the main cast of characters. There are a fair few Afro-Caribbeans, Africans, Asian Americans, there's this Irish guy and so many others. Not only is there an interesting mix of characters, it really does make sense given how all these characters are refugees from all over the world, clinging to the one bit of inhabitable land left. The diversity feels quite natural, and there's some characters' appearances and voices that suggest a lot of variations have blended together over the past, I think it's 50 years. There's still no women though, so there's that. Unless these guys have blended together so well that some of these are women and they just have no differentiation from men anymore. I mean, that's kind of a terrifying thought. In the first mission, we have to rescue an agent that we have placed in the council and make sure that the security team can't get him back. There's two ways that this can end. The agent can be saved by us or killed by us. One thing that I like about this game and its objectives is the way that there's a sort of switch up once the first objective has been completed. There's an objective A and an objective B. B is the chance for the side that lost objective A to redeem themselves, so you aren't completely fucked if you didn't succeed with objective A. I like this as a thing because there are a few things more soul crushing in a video game than when you fail in the first 5 minutes and spend your last 15 minutes just waiting for the timer to run out so you can lose. And you also get a second chance if victory just slips through your fingers. Another interesting design choice in this game is how running out of health results in incapacitation rather than death. It's kind of like Left 4 Dead where you need another player to show up and revive you. The guy who incapacitated you has the option to brutally shoot you to death whilst down and finish you off, but they also have the option of keeping you held in place whilst down. This results in a long respawn time, or results in them being bait for other teammates who come to save them and then you can shoot them as well. You can also ensure that the class that is the biggest threat to your objective can be out of the action, whereas killing them will cause them to respawn somewhere on the map and allow you to come back at you from another angle for another attempt. There's risk to this, as one medic getting close enough can revive a character instantly by tossing them a syringe and giving them a prompt to revive themselves, which makes the medic kind of redundant if players are required to heal themselves and save their own lives. Why not just give everyone these revival syringes and cut out the middleman? Instead, if they get shot, they have to wallow in their own blood and piss and misery and wait for the biggest moron on the map to drundle over to them and pass them a syringe that they could have carried in the back pocket the whole time. I actually play as medic the most, not because I'm a kind-loving Mary Seacole figure who loves to help people, but because I want to be able to give myself a health boost every now and then, without relying on the bots. There's also a number of command posts scattered throughout the maps. The owning gives you an advantage and your teammates an advantage. You get advantage in health, ammo, damage and a few other places. This is kind of a cool way of controlling the battlefield, but they do really fuck the bot design over, as the bots are obsessed with having all of them, even if it really isn't necessary. Actually, that's a nice chance for me to talk about the bots and how much I hate them. I hate these bots. They're so infuriatingly stupid that I wish I could execute them to raise the mass IQ of the planet by 10 points. They are so fucking stupid that if you don't do everything in this game, you are going to fail. I know that bots, especially from around this time, aren't renowned for being big brain geniuses, but Jesus fucking Christ, these bots are too stupid to love. Whenever you are at the objective and gunned down, you're always seeing the bots doing something on the other side of the fucking map. Having a family reunion speed date most likely. They're never where you need them to be, and they all sort of just do their own thing. They take your desperate pleas for assistance as a slight suggestion, and they're obsessed with these command posts, but can't seem to hold on to them for a few seconds. There's one mission in particular that's notorious for playing with bots because of how stupid the bots are. If you get downed, a bot has to revive you, and more often than not, they get fucked up on the way and die. If you get downed, just kill yourself because it's quicker and less painful. There's several missions where bots have to hack or repair something, and this can be a bit of a barrier because it never really occurs to them to go for the actual mission objective, and again, they just go farting around on the other side of the map. If you do it instead, the bots need to cover you, but don't seemingly think that it's worth doing, and they often just wander off. If they do cover you, usually, it's like 1/3 of your team doing so, and they have the life expectancy of an intellectual property in EA's clutches. The bots in this game are beyond frustrating to deal with, and I wouldn't wish them on anybody. So I kill this poor man by shooting him 10,000 times, and we escape with the knowledge that he's dead and our secrets are safe. For now. So in the next mission we have to go and rescue a pilot who's been taken into custody at the medical centre, and apparently that means that he's boned. So we need to get our asses out of there and get him back, as he's the only one who can get us to the promised land. The cutscene here does have a confrontation between two resistance members over this guy's brother being a member of the security team. There's another thing that suggests in the security side of things that this guy's brother is one of the characters in the security campaign, but that might just be me seeing things that aren't there. I don't know.
Wow, security tower. This intel gets us in and out, right?
Finally, we hit them in the heart. No more checkpoints, no more strip searches. They won't know what hit them.
Hey, what's the matter?
My brother. He signed up with security. What if it's him in my sights?
Your brother should have known better than to side himself with those fascists.
My brother is no fascist.
Everyone in there made their choices. You hesitate for one moment, you'll die.
This is quite a straightforward mission. You plant a charge and blow something up, and then you have to defend a safe. After successfully doing that, me and the boys leave with our new hobbling pilot friend. It's weird that this kind of mission is in the game, as the only other games I've seen this kind of thing in was from the early 2000s, when you had to escort that hostage character in Time Splitters. I'm fairly certain that Team Fortress Classic had a mode like this, with a civilian NPC. What kind of took the piss was how slow the fucker walked, like he was on a Sunday stroll, and how easy it was just to take him out. At least this guy is injured, so he has an excuse as to why he's walking so slow, and he can also be revived if he gets too badly hurt and falls to his knees again. So, this mission isn't anywhere near as dire as those classic missions, so I guess it's a step up. Still, would it not be easier to just sling him over someone's shoulder and deal with him that way? You could just fireman carry him out of here. It's at this point that I learned that non-automatic rifles are dog shit in this game, and I hate them. I can't even hit anything, and when I do, it does fuck all by way of damage. Anyway, me and the boys finally reach the docks and get the pilot out of there. The next mission involves getting a data key from an airport terminal or protecting the key long enough for it to delete itself, should we fuck the original objective up. Spoiler alert, me and the boys fuck this one up.
So Chen is using the data from the old air traffic control computer to plot a course? To where?
I believe everyone drowned in that flood. There's still a world out there.
So why has no boat ever come back?
Well, that just proves it.
If there is a world out there, why haven't the founders already asked for help? The sickness threatens their children too.
It doesn't affect the founders. They live in luxury by keeping us here as slaves. Well, they need us. They need us weak. They cut off our water, they let us fall sick, and then
Monorail's coming. It's security.
They're after the data key. Don't let them hack the mainframe.
So after getting gunned down and bleeding to death, I win this game and the data key is wiped. And it's useless to them now and they fuck off back on their little train.
we should have taken out more than just a fascist gunship.
Have you been listening to Makwan's propaganda? We're not terrorists.
Our people are dying like flies in the slums, and the founders still run a luxury resort.
Yeah, not so many tourists these days.
Exactly. Why don't they turn it over to us for housing? 5% of the population has 90% of the wealth. We live like slaves.
We're going through that?
Rubbing speed! Brace yourselves!
So now we need a navigation box for a plane so we can leave this shithole behind. This is the old tourist segment of the arc, which is kind of a cool backdrop admittedly. A lot of backdrops have a sort of holiday destination theme. There's an airport terminal and there's a pool. It kind of creates a nice dichotomous effect with the environment. Like, these things used to bring some sort of joy and now they're just what people fight over all the time. So me and the boys steal the nav computer and we have this sick ass machine that carries it. And someone straps shark teeth to it. I don't know why or how, but that is fucking awesome. In the next part of the story, there's a vaccine for a plague that's going around the slums. This part of the plot is actually something that I like because it has another spin in the security campaign where they're told that they're saving a biological weapon from falling into the hands of terrorists. Although it does make me wonder why there's a biological weapon on a very, very small contained ship. Like, what if it broke? It's not like you can go to a different country to get away from it, and everyone lives so tightly together. Why would you create one to begin with? But anyway, I do like how this doesn't make it fully clear who's lying here. If this is a vaccine or a biological weapon, it's never actually fully decided. One side is being duped regardless, but it's not completely obvious as to which one is. Is the Resistance trying to make a biological weapon, or are the security boys being tricked into stopping a vaccine from getting out to the people? Because if they knew what it actually was, they might be a bit more hesitant of stopping it from getting out. But then if it is a vaccine, why have they not distributed it more efficiently? Why are they letting the poor people die? Do the founders want the poor people to die? Like I said, there's a kind of rabbit hole here that I kind of like exploring in my head, but admittedly, there's not really any definitive answers in the main game. Maybe there's a few in the audio logs, but I didn't get to hear all of those because, again, they're all locked.
So, there's the vaccine.
Of course, you think Chen doesn't have a plan B in case we can't get out of here.
If there's the vaccine, shouldn't we share it out?
Exactly! We will share it. But do you think we can trust the founders to distribute it fairly? Like the water rations? While we live like slaves while they live in luxury? Okay. I know what has to be done.
Good! Then ready up! Security will be here any minute. Defend the vaccine. Defend our homes.
I can't help but just love how this guy looks like Mendez from Orange is the New Black.
You think they grabbed him?
We couldn't wait for him.
That plane is going to fly, right?
Maintenance did their job. Let's do our jobs.
Once security hits, if you think you can get in that plane, will you do it?
Well, you, what about your family?
My kids? Father provides. He provides a future. That's what I'm doing here.
Look, if I don't make it on the plane, or I do and you don't, it's been an honor.
Let's do our job.
I'd find this scene kind of touching if these were actual characters, but sadly, if they make a memorial to either of these two guys, you'd have to install a digital device with a display that changes the name of the memorial subject every 20 minutes. So, this is the final push, boys. We're gonna take the plane and fly out. This mission has quite a simple setup, and I was able to finish it reasonably quickly.
Ha! Victory! Brother Nachayev will soon return with help from the outside world, and we'll all be free. You did it, brothers. You did it!
After a long fought battle, me and the boys steal ourselves a jumbo jet and fly out onto the horizon to seek help. Good luck landing that friggin' thing. Anyway, that ends the Resistance campaign. For now. As I said, there's DLC to this thing and what if scenarios, but I think I'll show the security campaign first. So when you take a look at the security character creation, there's a variety of different parts. Though, like I said, your security guy is literally your rebel with different cosmetics, which is really disappointing admittedly. Whilst it does provide a cool what-if-like alternative scenario for your character, I would have liked the ability to make my character look completely different from his rebel counterpart. I decided that rather than having a Rastafarian Casey Jones, I'd have a cool cowboy veteran-like character for my security guy. He's a literal white hat cowboy who is too old for this shit. I did want to give him a badass Eleazar tash, but it's fucking locked, so I had to settle for this basic bitch beard. Fuck you game, you ruined my life. So the security campaign is the same thing as the rebel campaign, but from the other perspective, and it's kind of based around the idea that the security team always win, so several of the missions work differently. Though, typically, if you were doing offense in one campaign, you're doing defense in the other. There's a similar tone to the missions and a similar gravitas to the stakes, and you kinda see how one side seems to believe one thing and the other seems to have the complete opposite takeaway from it.
You're the captain, weapons hot, shoot to kill. Freaking guess.
Come on, man. It's not every single guest. It's Chen.
He ain't leading them nowhere they don't want to already go. First demonstrations, then riots, now kidnapping. What next?
Look, I'm just saying that. Where's this place we're going to again?
Fish Farm Visitor Center. Back when we had visitors.
And fish.
Let's get this over with. Safety's off. It's showtime.
One thing that was kind of annoying was how the textures fucked up at this point and the environment looked like a PS1 game. I was able to fix it in later levels by closing and reopening the game, but it did kind of undermine my recording. In this version of the mission, you'll notice that I have to defend the hostage instead of turning him into Swiss cheese. This is surprisingly not as hard as I thought it would be, though admittedly it lulled me into a false sense of security, as the security campaign is considerably harder than the rebel campaign. We'll see in a bit why. So me and the boys and this new boy get on a boat and sail off into the sunset. Happy days.
Terrorist prisoners to interrogate. We may be able to nip this insurgency in the bud.
So the next thing we'll need is the data key, which the rebels want to wipe. This is one that was a little more difficult, mainly because the bots are kind of useless, especially when it comes to attacking. They're much better at defense than offense, but they aren't especially great at either.
I don't care what you say. Intel raids using public transport is just embarrassing. Chopper fuel can't be that scarce.
So, this guy we captured,
The pilot, Nechayev?
yeah, Nechayev. So he flips on his comrades, and now we grab Chen's plans and it's all over? All this for one guy? He's the one grumpy guest?
No, but he's the one scaring the guests into revolt with some bullshit story about a plague when it's really this year's flu.
Look, for all we know, Chen's put a bomb under every Pelgo in the Ark. We have to know what he's planning. Stop Chen, the violence stops, so ready up.
Oh no, I'm wounded. Don't worry, these bots will save me. Oh wait, no, they went and fucked up. Never fucking mind then. So, because we're losing, I stopped relying on my bot friends in any capacity at all and just ran in solo and took the bag before running back out again. I had 3 minutes to go and these dipshits were failing miserably. This was honestly where these levels were getting a lot harder, and some of them get ridiculously so. After a few failed attempts, I actually make it out of there and liberate the data key, which probably knocks a few years off of my life with how much pressure it put on me, but I'm gonna call it worth it.
Now we can stop whatever Chen's plotting and capture the bastard before he tries anything else.
Whoa, 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 do your job?
You aim, you shoot. What's the difference?
Guess what, live rounds in the middle of the guest slums?
The guests are Chen's eyes and ears. The place will be a ghost town by the time we get there.
But I have family there.
So do I. But we have a job to do here. Somebody fires at you, you put him down fast.
This is getting towards some stormtrooper BS.
You think I want to be here? We are doing what we have to do. Ready yourselves!
So I got the vaccine / bioweapon and flew away, taking me to the next bit.
Why was Nechayev in the infirmary? He was healthy when we captured him. I don't... It's a drill, right? It's got to be a drill.
Weapons hot.
Attacking us here, are they insane?
What, you don't think they got a plan, huh? You don't think they've been planning this for months? Years? Man, they built this place. So what if they built it with a back door? They probably know more about our defenses than we do. Look alive!
In this bit, our security tower is being attacked by the rebels, and they're after the pilot that they need to escape. There is an interesting bit of narrative here where they debate as to why the pilot was in the infirmary, as the dude didn't seem to need medical attention the last time they saw him. It lends credence to what the rebels were saying, where they said that people who are taken into the infirmary tend to just get tortured rather than treated.
All units, code black. Chen has a surface-to-surface missile aimed right at the Founder's Tower. We're evacuating it as fast as we can, but thousands will die if you don't stop that missile. We have no margin for error here. If they know we're onto them, they'll launch. We'll insert you stealthily by boat. Find a route to the destroyer and deactivate that missile. You must hack that thing before they fire it. Save Founder's Tower!
Mass freaking murder, man. Talk about biting the hand that feeds.
So this was their plan the whole time. All the peaceful protests. All the negotiation, just a smokescreen.
We don't know that. They could be bluffing.
How much more proof do you need? Founders Tower goes, takes a dozen other pelgos with it at least. We're dealing with animals. They've seen us.
They're onto us! Full throttle! Weapons free!
Now, this mission is the most irritating thing in the entire game. The premise is that the Rebeldes are planning to fire a missile at the Founders Tower, which is the most important building on the entire arc. It's kind of like the White House and the Empire State Building combined. Like I said before, the bots are so incompetent that they make this mission impossible, because they are so fucking shit. The first objective isn't too difficult, where you hack the crane controls, but the following objective is a fucking nightmare. You have to defend the launch controls so the operatives on your team can hack the bloody thing, but the operatives are often fucking around on the other side of the map, and when one does show up, he's usually relying on you as his sole protector, which wouldn't be the worst thing if you weren't fighting an entire army of buffed rebels, because they also own all the command posts. Not to mention either that this idiot operative is likely to just deploy himself and try the hack, even if there's nobody defending him at all. Or if you're incapacitated behind him, he'll just do it anyway. Which means he'll die and probably won't attempt it again for another 5 minutes. So really, he'll attempt it 3 times throughout the entire mission. There's also a bridge that reduces the amount of time it takes to get to the objective, but a nearby crane can be hacked and the bridge can be taken away from you. One thing that is kind of frustrating here is that getting incapacitated usually results in you being fucked and having to respawn. Medics would just stand right next to me doing nothing and then get down themselves, like utter and complete divs. If you run out of health whilst being bombarded, then it's tough shit. You just gotta go back to the other side of the map and then run your way back over. It's an absolute load. The amount of times I saw this tower get blown up got on my tits. Every time I close my eyes I see it, because it's just ingrained into my eyeballs. But anyway, after an hour of that shit, doing it over and over again and expecting a different fucking result, I finally got to see the end. Ha! Stupid helicopter.
What the hell is it still launching? Citron!
Ran out of time, sir. Best we could do was hack the self-destruct. But don't worry, it'll explode harmlessly out over the sea.
Damn it, Seahawk 3, get out of there!
Going down! Going down! We got...
But I need you to focus.
Whoa, wait, Chief, do you want to calm down? Pretty sure that sort of fraternization isn't, appropriate in the army. Speaking of getting fucked, if we don't bow down to the rebels' demands, they're going to render the Ark a radioactive hellhole. Oh, buggery. So off we go to save the Ark from becoming another one of Bethesda's IPs.
Bluffing, right? Terrorist has to be bluffing. They wouldn't kill themselves as well.
You wanna bet your life he is? Your children's lives? You wanna give your gun to a terrorist? You've seen what they're willing to do!
Whoa, whoa, boat's incoming. It's them.
Still think it's just Chen?
Freaking guests.
Stop these maniacs before they kill us all.
Thankfully, this mission is a lot easier than the previous one, and I'm able to do it on my first try. Thank fuck, because an eighth of my fucking recording was wasted on that last mission alone.
Damn it, that was close. Do you realize what you've achieved? You just saved the Ark!
The security forces have triumphed, and Chen's resistance movement is defeated. Well, for now. Captain Macarena knows the guests will avenge their martyrs. Well, for what it's worth, well done. There's still an Ark to fight over, and that means there's still hope.
So that ends the meat and potatoes of this game's content. However, do not lose hope, brothers, because there are 4 what-if missions and a DLC pack to go through. So some time has passed and my Rasta Casey Jones has taken on a new look as his friends come back. I believe that the Resistance campaign ends on day 8 and this is day 21, so a fair bit of time has passed and the boys have found some new friends who have come back with them to assist in saving the Ark.
Cut out the brothers' crap! There is a security agent among us! It could be any of you! The original Encore prototype is the one thing we can use to battle with the outside world. It belongs to the guests. We can't let the founders just give it away. Blast your way down there. Activate the biosequencer. Then get the Accord sample back to the docking bay. There will be a sub to extract you.
In this mission, we get our hands on a biosequencer to create our own crops. If we can create food, we control the Ark entirely, which is why there's another mission to complete after this one. There's apparently a security agent amongst us who we actually find out who it is, but only in the security campaign. Their identity is a complete secret in this one. I honestly do feel that this secondary campaign, whilst it's nice that they bothered to put in cutscenes for it and tried to come up with a story, it's incredibly lax. It's 2 missions long. How do you tell a story with 2 cutscenes and 2 levels? It's a quarter of the length of the base game's campaign, and it doesn't feel like there's that much content here. This DLC is quite cheap admittedly, but maybe a bigger expansion might have made this game last longer. Or maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part. So this DLC map centers around a science center of sorts, and you get to see some technology that went into making the Ark sustainable. It's kind of a nice environment, but it's not exactly mind-blowing. I do appreciate the garden area that you start off in, but you spend so little time here and spend the rest of the mission in this generic looking lobby. When you get to the middle area, it does look a little more impressive, but most of the environment is white and beige. It's kind of dull, not gonna lie, and it feels overdone after Portal and stuff like that. So me and the boys managed to get the device and escape in a submarine, in style, and hopefully cut a deal with the outside world. There's something kind of interesting about whether or not the deal will actually happen or if it will get scammed, but we'll come to that in a bit.
Now we can cut a deal with the world outside. Excellent, brothers, excellent!
So, the last mission requires us to blow up the Founders Tower to use as a sort of firework to signal something to the outside world. Given that we're in the middle of the ocean and the explosion will happen at 2 in the afternoon, I'm sure lots of people are going to see it. We know a guy on the inside who said he'd let us in. This guy is apparently a member of the Founders Council, which you can tell from his military tattoos, build and outfit. I'm assuming he is wearing the mask to hide his face, but nothing about this guy screams council member to me. If it was a lack of resources as to why he looks so out of place, why not just reskin the guy that you had to escort from the aquarium mission? It just seems kind of weird that this guy looks this way when he's supposed to be a politician.
Okay, this is it. I've shown you the layout of the tower. The fertilizer barrels are all up there just as we have planned. Now all you have to do is hold off the security, but make sure you guard the detonator until it detonates. Okay, right. Whatever you do, make sure you give me enough time to get away. I have to survive in case there are other missions. It's Chen's orders, eh? We are doing this for a free Ark, for a better future. Good luck.
In this mission, we get to see the Founders Tower, and you kind of appreciate what the rebels mean when they live in a slum made out of shipping containers, and a small percentage of people own all of this, and they've kept it so nicely as well. Like, 99% of the population get like 2% of the land, and vice versa. It definitely shows the complete imbalance of the Ark. I get the impression that there's supposed to be a sort of allegory, I guess, as to, you know, the rich and poor wealth gap. And whilst I do believe that it is ridiculous, I do think in this scenario, I think it's so ridiculous that it almost doesn't make sense to me how it could get this bad. I mean, you literally have so many cubic centimeters of land to live on in this world, and yet somehow somebody's taken over everything. I just feel like logically they'd have to give more of it away over time, but then again the 1% are incredibly stupid, so maybe not. I defend the position well enough that I eventually blow the top off of the Founders Tower and save the Ark. Somehow. Truthfully, I think they just wanted to blow up the big tower, which if they were honest about that I could get behind it, because fuck big towers. There's no post-mission cutscene, and pressing the next mission takes you back around to an older map, so I guess this is the end of the Rebel story. Kinda sucks, I was hoping for an actual ending to all of this. Maybe some women might have arrived to the Ark on like a giant yacht, and me and the boys could end our long stretch of gay incest and inbreeding. Oh well, I guess I'll just have to have a headcanon ending. So next I did the security campaign, in which I have to protect the biosequencer that I stole in the last mission. I made my guy look a bit more official now that he's going back to hopefully just being a Bobby on the beat, but sadly he doesn't get to do this and he gets pulled back into this bullshit. He still has the goal of having a cool Eleazar mustache, but his facial head just won't matter if they don't have that biosequencer, because they'll all be dead.
Whoa! Swordfish 114! Okay. The original Arcoral prototype is saved on this lab's biosequencer. Stop the terrorists from accessing the elevator shaft. If they do, fall back, but don't let them activate that biosequencer. Oh, yeah. They stole a maintenance submarine from engineering. It must be their getaway. Don't let them get that Arcoral sample. Don't let them get to the submarine. Good luck.
In this one, it kind of works out the same way as the Rebel one, which makes some sense given that the DLC pack clearly didn't have the budget or resources that the other one had. Anyway, we had to hold them off long enough so that they buggered off and run away. And we kept a hold of the biosequencer thing. This means that we now have to defend the tower from being turned into a beacon of stupidity. Which, in the security campaign, I don't know why they're doing this, because it was kind of like a victory statement in the last campaign, in the Rebel campaign, and it was supposed to invite people to the Ark, whereas here they've got no chance of achieving anything that they achieve in the Rebel campaign. So they're just doing it out of spite, or...
We should have known when the seaweed nitrate production figures were out. That fertilizer bomb is massive. It'll take the whole tower with it. The detonator? It can't be disarmed, only removed. And even once removed from the main charge, if it goes off within 20 meters, it'll set the whole thing off. Get past their defenses. Get up there, remove the detonator, and then dump it as far away as you can. The clock is ticking. Let's go.
Apparently we have a bomb that is about to go off, and it has a detonator that cannot be disarmed and basically has to be thrown out of a window and into the ocean. Thankfully we are past the fuck awful parts of the game, and this mission is fairly easy. So our last set of missions are the what if scenarios, which I kind of appreciate as a thing, as you get to play some late game missions for the Rebels and security team which otherwise wouldn't have been accessible due to the fact that they depend on the narrative getting to that point. This includes the missile being fired at the Tower one and the Rebels trying to steal a plane and fly off. This also means that you get to see the consequences of some of the more extreme actions on both sides of the conflict. It's also explained here that the Ark did actually reach out to the outside world, but found little by way of help, and actually found that the other settlements out there were mostly hostile or struggling to the point where they could only leech off of the Ark, not help it. This suggests that the Rebels could be being scammed, or potentially the security forces are just being lied to, and their differences aren't quite as big as originally stated. Or maybe they just had a problem with the Founders and not the people of the Ark. There's a lot of room for interpretation, and I could see somebody who really cares about this shit having a debate about it, and honestly there is a lot of theories as to what could be going on in this game. I kind of like that. The narrative isn't just laid out in front of you, there's a sort of conspiracy that you have to consider and work out. Honestly, I haven't seen that on the level of this since Half-Life, and later on Dear Esther, which is another game where you don't know what's going on, but you kind of get ideas here and there, and every player has their own idea of what's going on. I definitely appreciate it, it's a good way of telling a story. So in this mission I've lost a fair bit of weight because I'm a defeated rebel who has fallen on hard times, and my mask is a bit more feral to show this. I'm currently fawning over this missile and imagining that it's a giant sausage that I could eat and end my hunger pains. At this point the boys go over the plan to launch it at the missile tower. I'm assuming that this whole thing takes place in one of the 50,000 game overs that I got on the actual version of this mission. IRA Hayes seems to have lost an eye and has a wicked scar, and also seems a bit more hardcore than he was in the original Rebel campaign.
The founders will have to back down now.
And if they don't, if McWena won't let them disarm security...
The founders built the Ark, but we keep it afloat. They took us in, but they've exploited us ever since.
We've subsidized them long enough. If they won't let us make contact with
yes,
the outside...
but I think we...
Hey!
Is there any other way to do this?
They're the ones holding us back. Remove them, remove the problem.
Okay. They've brought this on themselves.
This version of the mission is so easy, I managed to do it in a fraction of the time in phase 1 of the mission. That's actually quite impressive. By the way, I'm not sure what the shit happened to the particle effects here. I guess even they're shot by the gravitas of this event. I then get the opportunity to see the Rebel win cutscene, which is, well, odd, since it didn't play over the actual ending of the original Rebel campaign, just over this what if scenario. Well, whatever, we did it, boys, we freed the Ark.
So now you've seen it all. The Resistance triumphant and security victorious. More or less. Well, life on Ark staggers on. We fight, we scream, we pound our fists. Apes returned to the sea. And things keep falling apart. Always have, always will. Who knows what we'll have to face next.
We then get to see what would have happened if that Fallout mission would have gone in the boys' favour. It's cool to see the Rebeldes go so far in their craziness. Tragically, Asian boy's hair has not survived this conflict. And I don't see IRA Hayes or any of the other dudes either, so they're either dead or spending their last hour in heaven together behind the water ski shed.
Brothers, we know what must be done. We are the swords in Brother Chen's hand, but his hand must remain clean so that he can lead the people. Chen has shown us the path. And we must finish what he began. Either the Founders surrender their grip on the Ark, or we are reunited with everything we have ever lost. We will have justice in this world or the next!
We jam the fan and we're able to get to the core so we can overload it and hopefully kill ourselves and everyone else. We hook up a bomb and in 30 odd seconds it's over in a literal flash and everyone is dead. It's then that we learn that we're all idiots and this was actually just a bluff and we weren't supposed to actually nuke the place. God, we actually are a bunch of divs. Our leader spends the last few minutes of his life yelling at us and calling us all a bunch of idiots. I only hope my own death has such meaning.
Who told you to do this? This wasn't the plan. I never meant you to. It was a bluff! We were bluffing! I said threaten to, not to actually do it!
open thinking!
The security what ifs aren't as interesting in my opinion. One prevents the rebels from getting the nav computer after they rescue the pilot, and the other one requires us to stop them from taking off in the plane at the end of the rebel campaign. Like I said, there's cool info drops in these, but in all honesty, the big draw for me is the whole learning about the outside world thing. The actual consequences of these what if missions aren't that interesting. Like, the rebels just sort of get grounded and can't go anywhere. Like, you don't see them get executed or anything, they just don't go anywhere. And the nav computer thing also doesn't change anything. So, yeah, I mean, it's nice to have some more missions, but if you're looking for some great twists to the story on what if scenarios like in Marvel What If, sadly you're not going to find it here.
So there really is a world out there.
Do you think the waters covered the mountaintops and no one survived?
Well, no, but maybe they could help. Why would they be any better off than us? This place was built to run sustainably. The old world wasn't.
They've probably been trying to find us since the flood. Get their hands on our tech.
Kelp farms, the turbines, the desalination plants?
Yeah, and you think they're gonna ask nice or just take?
You're damn right! Can't let them find us. We have to stop that plane.
Yeah!
So ends all of the content that Brink has to offer. There's the online mode, which is the same thing because the developers actually wanted it to be that way so that single player could become online and online could become single player at a moment's notice, which I actually really appreciate as an idea. But sadly, nowadays only one server is running and neither Loz or I could get it to work when we tried it. The game also has one finicky online system that requires you to port forward in order to get it to work, and I was never able to successfully do that with this game and several others. Finally, we have these audio logs, kinda like the ones in BioShock. They're not particularly interesting in my opinion. I appreciate them trying to deepen the world of Brink, but it never really felt like a universe that I had a lot to invest in. Maybe there's an audio file that would blow my mind, and maybe the questions I had are answered, but it's buried under a lot of monotonous ones and locked away under a ton of challenges and playtime requirements and achievements and so many other things that I just honestly do not even want to try it. Like, what is the point? Not to mention either that I like the mystery and the interpretation aspect, and if these notes actually have the answer in them, it's going to make the whole thing not as fun for me. But, well, you know, it won't be the end of the world, but I'd prefer not to know. So I want to sort of finish off by exploring something about Brink that I noticed but never really got to fully understand until now. Apparently the fully released version of this game was not what people were sold in pre-release material, and I was kind of interested in knowing as to what a few disgruntled people were talking about in this regard. Turns out it was a lot more than a few. Even people who really liked this game and played it religiously admit that it might have been better if the game was what it said it was going to be in the promo materials. So, the first issue that I noticed is this E3 trailer showed you being able to run up walls and evade bullets. This was a pre-rendered trailer, but it definitely was a bit of a missell of what the game actually offered. The parkour elements in the game weren't quite this impressive. You could run up walls and along them and maybe jump off of them, but the parkour was a lot more stiff and rigid than this trailer suggested. In fact, I'd probably say that this game was inferior to Mirror's Edge, which came out 3 years prior to it. This guy is also seen leaping over a body, taking a dead guy's gun and blowing up someone with a grenade launcher, which is also something not doable in the game. It also doesn't tell you that the lighter build characters have a lot of restrictions when it comes to using certain weapons, And in all honesty, I don't know if the grenade launcher was one of those weapons, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was. It's kind of funny because you can see what these scenes became, but sadly, it never actually achieves what this game's E3 trailer built up in tone or atmosphere. It never quite feels as fluent as this wanted to be, and most of it is just people bundling up in groups and getting shot, like any other shooter on the planet. It's a perfectly fine class-based shooter, but it isn't this game. Not gonna lie, I would have liked to have played this game, which unfortunately never happened. Whilst the launch trailer was pretty cool and did a good job of representing the game, it was nowhere near as impressive as the E3 trailer. You could really see the compromises made with the parkour, in which a huge segment in the E3 trailer becomes a 2-second highlight in the full release trailer, and you really got the vibe of, hey, remember that game we said we were making? Well, this is what we managed to cobble together instead. I hope you still like it. I could be more forgiving if this was an example of the pre-rendered trailer being a bit too ambitious, because nobody trusts those anymore, mainly because they're just concept art more or less. They show you what the devs want to make, but not necessarily what they can actually do. Sometimes devs actually show things that they aren't expecting to have in a game, but ideas for the future as well, as seen in that Killzone demo thing that was actually put out as promotional material for Killzone 2. That game looked like a PS4 game, or even a current gen game like a PS5 or Xbox Series X game, and yet Sony marketed it as if it was going to be possible in 2008. However, whilst that does explain away the pre-rendered trailer, it really doesn't explain away the 2009 sequences that weren't in the full game. For example, this preview you can see has a much more interactive mission setup, where you actually stand around with your team before things get started, and there's bullets flying and you have this dynamic interaction. This was admittedly 2009, 2 years before the game came out, but still, little was actually established to clear up the fact that this game was not what you'd be getting later down the line. In fact, this game looks almost finished. If this is what they were offering, at least at that point, I wonder what the hell changed. I read one theory that consoles really dragged this game down, and what would have been possible on PC, i.e. the 2009 footage, wouldn't have been possible in the full release. So they had to sort of, I don't want to say dumb it down, because it's not so much dumbed down as it is changed to be a bit more traditional. However, even if you want to say that happened, they don't show the HUD elements or anything of that nature in this preview. This honestly feels like it's deliberate to make the game look a lot better than it actually is. This really does feel like a trick due to how far off the mark it was from the full game. Even the stuff you'd find in the full game is different in this trailer. So apparently I could interrogate enemies, which I never saw was a thing in the full game. I could be wrong, but I don't think that made it to the final version. Some of this stuff did make it to the full game, but doesn't play out as well as it does in this video, and some of it is quite blatantly misleading. There's little to no attempt to say, yeah, this game doesn't look like this anymore in later content playthroughs, and they instead just sort of want you to buy that this game is multiple games at once, which in hindsight might not have even been remotely possible to achieve. These dynamic interactions and in-game cutscenes are cool, but I wonder how it would have been actually possible if they implemented these in multiplayer. Maybe that's why they were removed? if they were there to begin with, and this just isn't a favourable demo mock-up to make people jizz their pants when a stupid convention thing came on. But then, why not just leave them in the single player and the co-op version of the game? If I was to guess, I'd say that this was that kind of special build, a mock-up, either their intentions moving forward or an attempt to sell the game to a certain customer base who would later walk away disappointed. Regardless, I feel it's dishonest, and honestly, stuff like this really made people distrust AAA publishers, and it's why E3 is on the verge of dying. In spite of a lot of my issues with cut content, I wouldn't call this a bad game. It looks quite good, plays okay, and it has a decent bit of variety in its objectives. I think it partly fell victim to the Halo killer label as well, that a lot of 2000s FPS games got. This was a game that was supposed to be revolutionary to its genre, and it wasn't especially. There's nothing wrong with that, but a lot of people seem to want that to be the case, and then they just get really sad when it isn't. Another thing about Brink was it launched kind of buggy, and not in its best form. I got this game quite late in 2012, so I think I missed the game being in less than a presentable state. I also find it kind of funny because if this was released 10 years after, that would be part and parcel. Like, AAA games always come out a complete broken mess now, and then get patched over the course of the week that they've come out. Whereas back then, it wasn't really acceptable to release a game in that kind of state. The final thing that I really do appreciate, though it's not a very sexy thing, is this interview where this guy talks about movement controls and explains how the game was developed in-house on all three systems. One thing that I can say about Brink with a lot of confidence is that the people who actually made it really didn't skimp out on quality, and it's really obvious to me that they were passionate about making something good. Sadly, it didn't turn out exactly the way that they wanted it to, but I wouldn't say that's due to a lack of effort. A lot of effort was put into the game, and a lot of thought was put into its design. It wasn't just the design of how it looks or even how it plays, but just the entire presentation of the thing. This guy explains that they made the game a little less photorealistic to not only make the game look better, but feel better. And honestly, I've had this sentiment towards games for years. The stylized look of this does actually hold up. Even if the long necks and weird proportions look a little strange, they don't look badly done. Most of this world looks decent, and if this was a new release like last week, I think it could pass as a mid-shelf game even 10 years on. He also has a very interesting philosophy to multiplayer and single player that I feel was ahead of its time, as he wanted people to be able to opt in and out of multiplayer, rather than single player and multiplayer being separate experiences. Admittedly, I do like single player and multiplayer offering different experiences, as it stops the game from feeling like multiplayer with bots, but I do appreciate their dedication to fixing this divide and providing players with the choice, and the ability to be fluent as to whether or not they play alone, with friends, or with strangers. Honestly, minor annoyances aside, I actually quite enjoyed Brink. It's far from perfect, but it's definitely unique in the way that it presents itself, and does go for several attempts at innovation that don't exactly fail. They're just not as big as they would have liked to have been at the time. The game also has a pretty impressive soundtrack. It's not the most memorable soundtrack, but it definitely is unique and fits the game's world very well. There's a good multicultural vibe to it, and it really lends itself to the vast island feeling that the game has to offer. I'd honestly love for there to be a remaster of this game, with some modern tweaks to it. Maybe some fixes to the issues I mentioned, more customization, more options for customization, better AI in the bots, maybe upgrade a few textures that haven't aged quite as well, and whatever else the devs feel like giving us. This game is pretty well optimized, even today, and it is actually free at the moment on Steam. I'd recommend it as it is very enjoyable, though the game does admittedly lack servers, so you'll have to find a way around that to play with friends. Honestly, if there was a Brink 2, I'd be down for that, so long as they didn't fucking lie about stuff this time. or ruin it with any bullshit that you get in modern games. This does seem like an IP that I could see carrying on, and I admittedly wouldn't like it to become a Fortnite clone like Game Rant suggested it should be. I feel like we have enough of those. And honestly, if people wanted to play Fortnite, they'd just play Fortnite. We don't need a million fucking Battle Royale games, most of which are shit. Hell, if I wanted to play Battle Royale, I'd probably just play goddamn Apex Legends. Or have myself checked into a mental institution.
Quiet. Very quiet.
You think they've pulled back?
Pull back to where? The sea? They live here. They'll be back.
They're just letting us cut our way in. Maybe whatever they're keeping in there isn't that important.
Yeah, or maybe they're planning something huge.
Maybe this whole mission was a colossal waste of time, and what we'll find is a rusty old pistol and some leaflets.
Yeah, maybe you should watch your sector, huh?
Well, you'd be just slightly perturbed if your front door was kicked in by a thug from Sector 2.
Perturbed?
You know, annoyed.
Yeah, you mean pissed off!
Why hasn't that damn thing?
I'm still betting on the leaflets and the pistol.
Yeah, you just do your job, soldier.
Watch out for the butt to head. It could malfunction and cut you open. What the hell?
Lower your weapon. Put the safety on. Sarge. Control. What did you say our objective was?
Welche neugierige Babbrüchen.